So, hi everybody. My name is not Alberto Planas. Yeah, I have a first question. I even haven't started yet, and I already have a question. Okay, tell it to microphone so it will be on the stream.
That's nice. Your slide is saying OBS plugin. Wasn't it OSC plugin? It's not the same thing. Do you know?
Yeah, I guess it should be OSC plugin. So after the talk, I will commit a patch. So, okay, I ended up with the introduction before the question. Okay, looks like question was answered and oh, you're not leaving. Okay, so my name is Michal Hrusecky. I'm not Alberto Planas. He was planned to do this presentation, but unfortunately he couldn't come, so I stepped in, and I will be talking what he was supposed to talk about, and hopefully I will be at least half decent as he was. So let's start with a little bit interaction. So this is a little bit picture. There is this OBS thingy, and there is this OSC. OSC is command line client for OBS, which is our build service. And that's what the first question was about. OSC is the thing up there, and that can be extended with plugins. OBS is the thing on our servers, and I don't know whether it can be extended by plugins. I doubt. And we will be talking about how to write plugin for the OSC, basically to help you automatize some of the stuff that you do. So, as I said, OSC is one of the interfaces to the OBS, and it can be extended. OBS actually has an API that you can use. It uses some REST-like protocol. What? Comment? Oh, okay, it's protocol. There are some comments about not being really REST or like or something. So let's say it's protocol. It uses HTTP requests. That part is right. And results are usually in kind of XML. Sometimes there are results, sometimes there are not. And OSC is written in Python. Alberto was excited about this part, me not, but it's written in Python. Many people speak Python, probably more than Perl. At least, well, actually, nah, it's the other way around. Perl can be spoken, but it cannot be listened or read or something like that. So yeah, Python can be both written and read. So let's start with some basic example that Alberto provided for us. This is how simple plugin can look like. Wow. Really nice colors on the projector. Okay. So if you understand Python, who of you know Python? Pretty much most of us, most of you? Okay. So you can use OSC, import some stuff, and then you can write your own command. It will be explained a little bit more in details later. And when you write your plugin, you have to somehow deploy it, and that's done quite easily. You just copy it or link it to OSC plugins directory in your home. Then if you write it correctly, you can use it from OSC. If you use osc ---- help, it will show your command, and it will even show the help for the command if you use osc command ---- help. If you wrote it wrong, it will break your OSC. There is actually environment variable that you can use to prevent it from breaking OSC, but by default, if you break your plugin, it will break your OSC, and you have to fix it before you continue working. So if your OSC is not working and you are playing with some plugins, check your plugins directory and try deleting stuff from there. So every plugin consists of entry point. This is this do something stuff. It's unbounded method, which I was explained that it means that it's a method that is actually not part of the class initially, but it's added to the class later somehow. I hope I'm partially correct. Then there is a function decorator to set parameters and alias. That's the stuff that we saw up on top of the function that actually specified how to call it. Then there is a doc string that was the shining greeny thing with the help. And then it accesses OBS via this HTTP get and post and put and delete. Delete is default. Yep. Well, I know these four, but you said it's not fully REST, so. Okay. So, and if you want to extend some functionality, you can use functions that are already available in OSC core. And when you get the result back, if you get some result back, you can use elementary for parsing this XML. One thing to be a little bit cautious about, not all functions that you can find in OSC are really suitable for being used from plugin, because some of them has some side effects like printing to the screen and opening editors and stuff like that. So make sure that the stuff that you want to use actually does only the things that you really want to do, and doesn't have any unpleasant side effects that could surprise you. So, plugin entry point, unbounded method, and this is the decorator thingy. And you can see how you can create a new command. In this case, it's command vr, and it has some options. It uses same syntax as Python outparse library that you probably are familiar, as you said that you know Python. And then there is this doc string that will appear in the help. Some useful commands from the OSC. Make URL will help you construct the URL to be used later. And HTTP _ get, post, put, delete will help you to create HTTP requests so you can actually communicate with build service. And not from OSC, but from Python itself, elementary parse to actually create a structure from XML to be able more easily to access data that OBS returned for you. So here's the example how you can actually call something. And this is a little bit more complex example how to request something from build service. This is declining review request, I believe. Sorry? Yeah, it's declining review. These are the parameters. Then it it constructs URL from the parameters. Then it calls the build service via HTTP post, and we get something back, parsed XML, and we check what is the code attribute in there, and that's all. If there is an error, we print something. That's one of the easiest OSC plugins that you can try to write. Yeah, question?
What's the code attribute mean?
Sorry?
What do you mean about a code attribute? What's that mean?
What's code?
There is some code is returned.
Yeah.
It's returned code, right.
Good. Code is part of the XML, and yeah. Question was what's the code, and yeah, it's the stuff that build service returns. As set from Kula, it's in this case probably okay. And in general, when we were developing plugin, at least what I did was trying always just calling the stuff and looking at the result XML and trying to figure out what does elements and attributes in there mean and which ones are interesting for me. There is OSC API call command that you can use to actually call directly URL, and it will return the XML that you would get, so you can simulate the progress of writing your plugin this way. So this is another example where you can get some information about some persons. Again, make URL using the API URL. API URL is defined in your, for example, it can be defined on command line, or it is defined in your configuration file from OSC, and it will construct the URL, get the information, you will get XML tree, and then you will find some of the elements, I believe. Some other high-level functions that can be useful. Again, if you want to do something more complicated, it's really useful to just go through the OSC, find out what functions might be helpful for you, and check that they actually do only the stuff that you want to do and nothing more. And now Alberto provided us with some example, which I put somewhere. And is it visible? Yeah, this one looks almost okay. I will just... So this is a whole plugin. As was said in the presentation, there's this entry point, this do-foo, which is unbounded method. These are these decorators, which specifies the command. You will call it by using OSC either bug report or BR. And then there are these options that will allow you to specify something else. If you ask for the help for this plugin, it will show you the stuff that is written here in this docstring. From what I understood, this is the usual way how you document your functions in Python. So it shouldn't be something really new for you. then we just start parsing some arguments, get API URL, which references the OSC object that this method is unbounded to or from or something. And then it does actual stuff. It calls method that is part of OSC. So Alberto in this example doesn't use directly HTTP requests. He uses some method that is already part of OSC to get stuff. And then he uses XPath to find the correct stuff that he's interested in. If we scroll up, he has some helper functions that are really long. Well, not really, but for this screen, it's long. And on the top, you can see the functions that he actually used to import. He imported from OSC code, and he uses in his plugin to actually provide the functionality that he was interested in. And if you want to learn more about this stuff, there is a wiki page on our wiki. There is already OSC collab plugin that Vincent spoke about, I believe yesterday, right? Okay, just before me. So, and what we actually did was that we write our own plugin. It was meant to, it's meant to help with staging plugin, staging project, and it's meant to help Kulo to manage factory. You can take a look at that. We have even some test suite written, so you can get inspiration even for writing tests for your plugin. And that was all what I wanted to say. One more thing, if you want to join us, join us. And now, time for your questions. And thank you for your attention. Sorry for not being good, Alberto. And while I will be trying to answer the question, there is plenty of skilled people in the audience that can help with answering the question. So I might redirect some questions to them. So let's start with the questions.
So I guess my first question would be, when should you write a plugin versus actually writing something that goes in OSC core? Because I've written a couple of plugins, and one I ended up putting in the core afterwards. The other one I haven't yet. I guess there are some advantages to pushing it to the core and some disadvantages, and I was wondering if one of those advantages or disadvantages might be to do with OSC2, and whether plugins written for OSC will work for OSC2.
So we had this discussion just recently with this repo checker thing, because the general idea is that plugins are something for you or your team, and if it's general functionality that can be used no matter where, then it's feasible to go into core. And I think OSC2 has a completely different architecture. And actually the current way of writing plugins is really hacky, because he agrees. So basically the big problem with this approach of this unbounded method, as I learned, is that they run in the namespace of OSC. So some variables you can't use, even though it's very far from clear why, and others are there without any documentation. You have to dig them in the core and stuff like that. So I think, I did not look into it, but I think the general idea of OSC2 was to have a library to use for plugins and then a driver and stuff like that. So basically a real plugin architecture. The plugins currently are just like sourced in bash files.
So the thing I'm slightly worried about is spending effort developing stuff for OSC, whether it's a plugin or in the core, and then at some point OSC2 comes along and we have to start again.
For one, OSC2 is, I think, the fourth year in development now. And the other thing is, the hardest part is actually finding the OBS API, the right OBS API, digesting the XML and stuff, and I guess this part will stay, but it's only guessing.
So just to give you an example with the collab plugin, the code of the collab plugin, while ugly, is still supposed to be organized like properly, so you have classes and so on. And this can actually be moved to OSC2 whenever we need it. The integration with OSC itself is just this tiny bit. All the logic is the difficult part. I have a question. Is OSC core, yes? Oh, well. You need the microphone.
What do you mean with a REST-like protocol? Do you mean SOAP or what is that?
So Kulu will answer this question. I like your answer.
So SOAP is, I think it's JSON over something, and REST means, I think, also JSON over something. So, and REST-like is a form created to describe this kind of API that OBS uses, but has nothing to do with REST. Actually, it's basically the correct term, I guess, would be inspired by REST API. So REST is basically a standard that these letters mean something, but I don't know. Does someone?
Representation is, I don't remember.
Anyway, you can generate objects, you can update them, you can delete them in a defined way and in a predictable way. Unfortunately, the predictable part falls away in OBS API.
The main idea in REST is that in other protocols or paradigms like SOAP, you are adding layers in top of HTTP to do anything. So you are adding your own definition to what everything means and another layer on top. REST-based APIs just use the pure HTTP 4 methods, where there are more than 4, but use 4. The get, post, delete. So it's not creating new layers. You simply have to define some resources, like web pages, for example, and you have different representation. The R is for that. I don't remember the rest, but the R is for because you can have several representations on it. So it's like a streamlined version of SOAP and all this stuff, trying to be so straightforward as possible, removing all the extra syncing that was not that necessary in the end.
Oh yeah, I forgot my question.
So, no other questions? Hola, and the rest I forgot, but ended with Alberto Planas. Unfortunately, I can't speak Spanish. Not yet. But Kulo can. Yeah. Few deep thoughts from Kulo.
No, I'm not prepared.
Come on, you do it every day.
I prepare it every day.
You can repeat. They haven't heard you on Monday or Tuesday. You can repeat something that you did.
No, seriously not.
Okay, so no clever Spanish talks from Kulo now. Oh, so go to see Kulo's talk. He will be speaking Spanish there. So, yeah, if there are no other clever questions or stupid ones, thank you for your attention and have a fun writing OSC plugins.